So, welcome to the global lecture hall for today's session, which will be extremely intense and, as usual, stimulating. Today we will broadcast from 3 different places, from here, including some other ones. Here from the University Carlos III from here in Madrid, from the University of Rome La Sapienza in Italy, and the University of Salford in Manchester, UK. As told, we have an extremely filled schedule. So first I will give you this short overview, then I will continue the main thread of a lecture showing how we can try to cope with the problem that we have identified. After the coffee break at 10:10, we will have a Tamar Flash, which will give a very interesting topic about how you can model motion control in a way which is not the standard one. And then we will have another couple of talks on synthetic biology from Luisa Damiano and Luigi Luisi. And finally, after at 11:40, 10:40 GMT, we will start the education and industry section with Samia Nefti-Mediani from the University of Salford, which will also give an interesting announcing on an educational project within the Marie Curie framework. And we will have Dirk Pensky from actually, physically speaking, from Germany, about the strategy of in the robotics week at Festo. So it will be very interesting. So where we are now, this is the 7th or the 8th of our lectures, and we are actually now moving to try to show how we can actually ground the cognitive functions into the in a different way, which hopefully is not affected, for instance, by the frame of reference problem. And we also have a special session, the short session on education and industry. So, and then I will introduce the speaker as we go on. Sorry for this. And so today we will continue the trip, and we will start to see some more maybe concrete stuff. As I told you, as we are telling from the beginning, we don't give many mathematical details because we want to focus on the ideas and the concepts. If you look to the textbook or to the many references that have been provided, you can all, if and you are eager to enter into the details, which are important, you have all the material that you want. So let's do a very brief summary and then enter in today's discussion. So we have seen, we know that the so-called good old-fashioned, it's a joke, no? So the traditional and classical approach to AI has had many important successes, and one is is in plain sight, and it is Google, right? Then we have chess, and we have robotics in manufacturing, which is actually is not even something that you talk about. And then we also know that there are some problems, some flaws, for instance, in how to found the behavior, or to be what we call, we don't define very well, but what we call as a natural interaction. This kind of movement in this way is very difficult to implement in an artificial system. And mainly the possibility to interact in a robust, I don't say anti-fragile way with the real world. The other observation that we have done many times is that there is a big difference in terms of conceptual approach in the way robots, let's say, robots already out in the wild, in the factories, are designed so with a top-down approach, sometimes implementing some machine learning, meaning some statistic learning procedure, and the multi-agent, emergent, soft structure of the natural intelligence. We know it in animals, in bacteria, or in humans. No? So the big problem is, it would be very nice for our approach to robotics and AI to have labels, no? So to write the names of the things on themselves, no? Like in this joking cartoon. You can cope with RFID, which is a way to do that. But we were looking for a more robust and way to put names on the things in an artificial system. And you may remember, as we finished the last lecture, with Puppy in slow motion on the treadmill. That maybe now Nathan will show. If you look at this, what it's if you want is like the Simon's ant on the beach. So you have an impression of a very complex and sophisticated behavior, and you have, actually you have. But what is really significant is that this system has no sensors and has no control. So, of course, it is not a full robot because there is the treadmill giving the energy, and actually we control the speed by the speed of the treadmill. No? It's very similar to a scaring example that might be, the cat without head. No? But the problem is that it works. So the problem is that is there a way, and this is the research program, and this is the paradigm that we are pushing, to design robot exploiting this? So just very short, because as I told, we have a tight day. So the problem is that we really have very little actuation, and everything is in the mechanical structure and in the springs. The challenge, so what we makes any way to interpret this is to talk of morphological computation, so to say that huge part, most part of the information processing is actually off-sourced to the physical structure of the system. How to design let's say, a workable robot, usable every day, this is actually the big challenge. So if you look at walking, I used this good old-fashioned working approach. So if you look in this picture, you have up, you have the Delft walker, the Cornell workers by Ruina and other collaborators, and the Cornell Ranger. You have a man walking, and below you have on the left side you have Curio and Asimov, which are, as I told, are probably to the limit of what can be done with the current paradigm. And we had some fun showing Asimov falling from the stairs, which is, of course, is fun. But where is the big difference in between these approaches? If you look at a brainless robot like the Cornell passive dynamic worker, but maybe Nathan will show you the video in a minute. So again, it's a simpler example of Puppy, and it actually was before Puppy. But what you see here is that you don't have any control, and you have a walking which seems more natural than the walking behavior of other systems which are more complicated. And then you have also, I didn't tell this, but there is if we now show the video of the Cornell Ranger, Nathan. Okay. So No? So what's notable? Another notable thing is that these structures are not only parsimonious, no, efficient, very efficient in terms of computing, because I mean I have almost or no computing, and I have a very nice and complex behavior. But they also have are efficient in terms of energy absorption, because in comparison to a good, a top full actuated working robot to a person, for instance, we have a factor of 20. So the robots consume about 20 times as much energy as humans, and this is inefficient. What is very notable about the Cornell Ranger is that it is simple. It just work around in this stadium, but it could do with 64 kilometers with just a battery charge. So you see, we are assuming that that we can fix it. So we can really devise a mathematical formalism, a modeling approach, an empirical set of best practice to design this kind of things. You see which could be the benefits in terms not only of making more, having elaborated behaviors, like but so far we have only partially achieved, and having the kind of power assumption which is absorption which is compatible with what we would like to do. No? So at least comparable to animal, to natural system that we see every day doing things that we struggle to try to replicate with machines, right? So there is a very interesting analysis about this in a paper from Rolf Pfeiffer and alias in Science a few years ago, which actually tried to give an idea, gives a model for this kind of things. And it shows actually what is notable here, which seems extremely two things. No? At the top, we have a controller, which is an orchestrating controller. It's not a top-down controller. And then we have a lot of information processing and of behavior generation, forgive me for these words, at the level of a structure, of a musculoskeletal system and its interaction with the sensory system, but also the sensory system morphology matters. I will show in a minute what I mean. And then the ecological niche. So we talked about this, but we need to consider the tasks that we want, the behaviors that we want, with respect to the physical agent implementation and to the respect to which environment we are going to work inside. In contrast, we have a coordinate approach. But I say, I think that if you were connected last week, you have noticed that it was extremely stimulating. The talk from Kevin, where there are extremely good ideas, even in terms of computer vision in the outdoors, when we talk about what really color is. On the other side, you have seen that in Shanghai, where they are implementing a kind of octopus arm, something very similar to the octopus arm, they had to rely on an approach which is similar to the one in Asimov. Why? Because there is a big scientific gap that I hope that in the next decades, with the next generation, we will be able to, with the help of the next generation, we will be able to fill. And another point which is typical in nature is the redundancy. But in which sense redundancy? Redundancy that means using different paths to get the same information. So I localize people in this room because I have a stereo system, so already I have two eyes. But I also have sound. And if I were closer to people, I also have smell. So actually this redundancy approach, which actually exploits the fact that which have benefits, not statistical benefits into fusion of different time series. No? This is the underlying mechanism. But redundancy is another of the important design concept that we see in nature. So just to do a brief recall before going forward. So we have seen the fact that what I was just saying, no? The ecological niche, desired task, and agents organization. I mean, how you structure, orchestrate the processes, and how you, and this is an open field, how you orchestrate the control. You have seen in the cell, we have seen in many cases, you have many parallel loosely coupled processes. You also have, if you think about it, you also have in the puppy. And then there are other topics that we are going to enter today briefly, and I really suggest you to check the plenty of lectures, the plenty of documentation that we gave you before. So we will discuss briefly about sensory motor coordination and a couple of other principles. Now, one of the main one of them is the chip design approach. The chip design means that it's exemplified by the Cornell Ranger or puppy. You don't need so much complication. You need to really design the system in such a way which does what you want to do in that context. No? And this allows you to have something which is cheaper in terms which is simpler. I mean, the passive work is very simple. And cheap in the sense that it spends less money in energy. No? It consumes less energy. So this is in 30 seconds, the idea of chip design. And then another point. The point is that what I do if I don't know where I will find myself, should I have some strict rule, or should I have some value which tells me what to do? For instance, stay away from water if I am a cat, or stay away from fire, or if you are a young baby, stay away from the electricity plug. No? So this you need a number of very generic behavioral criteria, very abstract, you can see as a value system. And this is another way, another access. And the other one that it's exemplified by this picture, you need to have a balance. So the agent system needed to be designed in a way which is coherent with the environment, and it is internally balanced. So it would be good for the snail to have these big eyes, but it would be very difficult to carry them around. No? So you need to have a balanced, ecologically and internally balanced system. So we have kind of challenge here, no? Because we need to think how to distribute the task, how to distribute the control in a way which is not the obvious one. The obvious for us, which are this legacy of top-down control, this, if you want, this Cartesian view, which was a revolution in these times, but it's probably not the most appropriate for studying intelligent systems. And so, how we can do? I talk about the morphology in terms, because it's important. We have no time to go into many details, but I think you can catch easily the concept. So it's important to understand that if you properly design the structure, you can save a lot of energy and computation power for working, for actuation, kind of actuation. But this is also true from the sensing point of view. So if you look to insects, they have very different shapes of very complicated eyes, as you see in this picture. And but they also have very simple behavioral rules, which they implement, by the way, with hundreds of thousands of neurons. So there is a lot. So it's important not misunderstanding the point. We are not saying we don't need control. We need, what we say is that we need a lot of control, but it's a different kind of control, and for doing much more sophisticated and complex and robust things in the wild. This is the point. No? So we need to invent, in some set, to a certain extent, a control strategy. But I think we can do it. So if you look, this is another paper that you may check. The idea is that the optic flow with this strangely shaped eyes is the way that bees use to move, to know where they are. No? which is a different way from taking the distance with some wheel or similar approaches. No? So there is the thing to remember is that the morphology of a sensor, in this case of a light sensor, matters. And then, and now you may say, okay, this is okay, this is very good from, maybe you are a mechanical engineer or something, you like these things, you like small machines, strange machines, no? But how you come from here, from popping on the treadmill to having symbols, no? Because I say, my problem is to put labels on the things in such a way that my robot doesn't fall in the mistake, is not affected by the flaws of Dennett's robots, no? Dennett, the philosopher, or Dennett's example. So what I can do, what I have to do is what we observe in nature, maybe with other mechanisms, but what we observe in nature, which is that the control structure, the representation of a word is emergent. So the sensory motor flow, the multiple, because it is the redundant different series of sensory motor flow, this series of numbers that I get from outside. And here, for instance, it's very, Bialek did a very nice analysis on the fly, of the fly nervous system, where he actually shows the flow of bits coding light. And so the idea is that this information has to be self-structured. But now let's think to an example that we've done semi-far, the one of grasping, right? So I say that when we work, the working is a kind of controlled working in human, right? The grasping of this mouse is actually a controlled fall of a soft structure, soft musculoskeletal structure onto the mouse. So how I can do it? We should try to do it in a way which exploits chip design, and affected an example that and all this sensory stimulation, the proprioceptive, that if you have a complex tendon-based and soft structure, is actually a rich internal proprioceptive flow, which you match with a rich internal, and that we say you create the sensory motor flow, because if I move an object, I actually change this. So I introduce changes, and I have something to attach, to try to understand what's there, what's out there. So how I can the induction of have the induction. Let's see at, for example, what I mean. So is it possible to implement something like that? Yeah, it's possible. For instance, they did something like that in the AI lab in Zurich. You see the name, it's David Lungarella, Pablo Carbajal, and actually with supervision of Roth, I suppose. And this is an example of an arm which is human mimetic. And maybe now Nathan will show the videos. You see, it's very similar. No? It's like, so we have three. The idea is this one. You have this loosey, softly connected arm, and where is the problem here? It's extremely difficult to control. And now we have another example. Doing okay, I waited for a while now. So this is the idea. But you see that the behavior is really natural. Really natural. No, it's very similar to this one. Of course, it's still very simple in comparison to this one. But I mean, it took billions of years to arrive here, and we are trying to do it in decades. So, and now another example. So, it's something that you couldn't believe it is really possible, which is the robot frog from Kuniyoshi's lab at the University of Tokyo. We have so. You see, this seems extremely difficult to design, but this actually comes from application of this principle. So it's the structure is another puppy, if you want, Now, everything is in the most of the things. I would say everything is in the picture, in the musculoskeletal structure of the artificial frog. So, and this is actually what shows the potential. As I told you, we have example. We are in Copernicus' age. Maybe we still are not in Newton's age as regards this approach to robotics. But I use the word Copernicus, but this could be Copernicus. But this could really be the point. Huh? So, and then we have other examples like Stampy. We have no time to show a very nice video of many Stampys self-organizing to do a very nice dance. And so, but okay, where are the symbols? Where is cognition? We could be a big flow. First thing. Now, I don't know. I should check the time because we could be already very. No. So I can leave the. So I'm sorry for the interaction that I usually foster. No, but just in 2 minutes. No? So this structure working down a slope is actually remembering how to go down slopes. It knows, in other words, how to go down a slope. But is there any memory in this system? So it's a rhetorical question. No, there is not. The memory is in the structure. And let me show you a more, even more daring example. No? Thanks to a fountain. A fountain, there are also very sophisticated fountains. So if you're in particular in Las Vegas, in the casinos, where you have wonderful fountains. No? But this fountain is a structure. No? You see, you have this hemisphere. No? But is there anywhere written that it is an hemisphere? No, it's the position of a source of water. No? Where are the taps? They actually, and how much water is pushed there is where the structure is. We see the structure, but there is not structure in the fountain. So this could relate to what Kevin told about feel, if not consciousness. So it could be a definition, but the reality are interaction processes of intelligent systems with a world. In this case, I see a fountain, I see a structure, but there is no memory. There is not a picture of a fountain inside the brain of a fountain. No, this is the idea. So, and then a typical, this idea was actually pushed by Ashby in the 50s in another book that, if you have time, you should find the time. I suggest you to read is an introduction to cybernetics. No, so what really means that the dog means the accident. Does he has a structure, or he has developed a behavior? This example is that the dog had an accident, and then every time that and during the accident the car braked strongly. So every time that the dog hears a car braking, so what does it mean? That it remembers something, or that it developed a kind of Pavlovian association between the braking sound and being scared, and reacting. Ashby's idea is on the second side. So, where does symbol come from? If you check the repository of a ShanghAI lecture, you will find a nice, a very interesting and stimulating lecture on where mathematics come from. But let's fly a bit lower today. Where symbols come? So the idea is that they come from the morphology and they emerge from the sensory-motor interaction. Like the idea that Professor Reagan suggested about the emergence of feel. Don't use the word think about feel as a way to manage the interaction with outside, which is maybe also okay. I don't want to enter too much into this. So exploration. So the trajectories of this arm are not written anyway as the fountain shape. So it's the way it falls. A structure like this falls. And then we say, we have another point. How the sensory motor can induce an information structure? assuming that, okay, we have raw material. So how we can extract from this rich stimulation coming from inside, outside, and above all from the interaction. So the structural interaction with the outside will get. But there are ways to do. So actually, this idea is not new. Actually, in the psychological community, in particular on the more empirically oriented psychological community. I really read what Dewey said in 1896, and what Merleau-Ponty told about 50 years ago, actually almost exactly 50 years ago. So Dewey said, we begin not with a sensory stimulus, but with a sensory motor coordination, which is exactly the idea that we are pushing. In a certain sense, it is the movement which is primary, so not the perception, the movement. And the sensation which is secondary, the movement of the body, head, and high muscles, determining the quality of what is experienced. So you will never represent odors if you don't have a nose, right? In other words, the real beginning is with the act of seeing. It is looking and not a sensation of life. So it's the interaction, not the representation. And that's why the embodiment and the dynamic of the body has a basic role in this approach, in the body approach to intelligence. And then what 60 years later, Merleau-Ponty, since all the stimulation which the organism receives have in turn been possible by its preceding movements, which have culminated in exposing the receptor organ to external influences. So if you are closing your eyes, you won't feel the wind. One could also say that behavior is the first cause of all the stimulation. And we think that behavior depends on the structure, on the physical embodiment. So, okay, and the symbols, you may ask to me. Okay, there is, I think, we think, an extremely interesting paper from Lungarella Expons in 2006 on how this structuring of information can emerge from sensory stimulation. So I save you the experience of entering in this, but there are ways to which actually comes from theoretical from information theory Shannon way. So from the basic work on communication made by Shannon in the 40s, which allowed to define a range of algorithms which can structure the content, can allow you to say how much information is into a series, temporal series of data. No? So I have temporary 25, it's 24, so what's inside it? Maybe you after some time you will see that it changes during the day and during the seasons. No? And you have other, so and on that you can define other metrics. In particular, in this paper, it was analyzed as not only this example, which is a kind of simple humanoid moving as a ball and looking with a camera. No? But it's really interesting. They implemented a learning system with neural networks, but I mean, you are somehow free to choose the implementation of a learning system. What is really interesting that if you compare the random mechanism below and the one where you have foveation, no? So above, so where you have, forgive me for this oversimplification, a real management of a physical interaction, you see that in terms of these different metrics that you can find of how much I am connected, how much I'm able to predict my future, the future value of my sensor after my actuation. So I do something, so I am synchronized with the world, when I move here the hand to catch this, my hand really end up there. No? This means that I am more or less synchronized. if I'm not. So how we can measure it? For instance, with kind of metrics based on information theory that they were used in this paper that I suggest you to check by Longarella Espon. And the idea is this. It's above. Above you see that I have structure. So there is something measurable. A further step, which was done by Propocampo, I, and other people, is that you actually could use, as I've seen, that the maximization of these metrics follows a good interaction with the world. Why I don't use it directly to drive the learning? This is the idea behind information-driven self-organization. And for instance, there is an interesting simulation example from Tanev and others, which is the transaction of robotics 2005, Tanev and other people, where actually it was shown that a series of balls, by optimizing the predictive information, so the possibility, this kind of synchronization, I move something and with a very loose coupling of the balls, is able to emerge a behavior which is extremely similar, if you look at the simulation, to that of a real snake or a crocodile. And this suggests something. Unfortunately, this is extremely time-consuming in terms of computation. But the idea, and where does enter the physical structure? So an hypothesis is that the structure comes from the fact that optimization is not performed into a Cartesian space, but in the actual movement space of the body, which is actually represented by Lie groups. Groups B, which are ways of representing the symmetry in the interaction. It's an interesting aspect. And there are differences. So if you consider that this movement space is curved, you will understand that you have a very low probability to find something in the place where we have the blue ball. So, and still I'm not talking about, so I did some steps in the direction, but still I'm not saying how I think the symbols would emerge. And here I go back to Papi, which also has some was made mainly by Fumiya Ida, which is now at the Polytechnic of Zurich, the ETH. But there are attractors in the dynamical system sense into these dynamics. So maybe this attractor could be the basis for building the symbol. So and if you look down into this shaped, you have these balls, this shaped phase space of Papi. So we have not done, as I told you, we are talking about a research program, not about a finished research. But if you put together the information self-structuring that we have discussed a while ago, the principle that we have discussed so far, and the fact that there are regularities in these dynamics, the idea of building symbols emerging from the sensory motor stimulation interaction is not so strange, and it doesn't seem an impossible task. It's a science-based research task, but I think that you may have understood from what I said just before, it's more than feasible. So Kevin was talking about a decade, maybe two, but we are almost there. And so that's all for today. And we will continue the discussion in the next lecture and then in the following one with Rolf, which will give kind of summary of what we have told in this. I will say that this idea of that the space where the motion control is performed could not be also in humans the good old-fashioned Euclidean Was actually pushed, was also presented by, initially I would say, presented by Tamar Flash, which is the next speaker just after the break. So I want to thank all the speakers of today and all the group that have attended, all the people who worked. In particular, special thanks to the Fiora Pirris group in Rome, in the Alcor group of the University La Sapienza, and to Samia Nefti-Meziani, who hosted the industry and the educational and industry session. So thank you again, and stay tuned for the next lecture, which will be towards a theory of intelligence. So we will try to continue the main thread, and then we will have another group of very interesting guest lectures. Thank you and goodbye.